It's a popular idea. I love Jesus, but I hate religion. We picture him as a rebel fighting the religious establishment. His most fiery words were for the Pharisees. Many conclude Jesus came to abolish religion, its rules, rituals, and authority, for a simple personal relationship. But what if this popular image is a profound misunderstanding? What if the man who said, "Woe to you, hypocrites," wasn't attacking religion, but fiercely defending it from corruption? This is the key. We must go beyond this caricature into the Gospels to find the truth. Was Jesus against religion, or was he against the spiritual poison he warned would destroy the soul from within? Chapter 1. Defining the virtue of religion. Before we can even begin to analyze what Jesus said, we have to define the one word that sits at the center of our question: religion. In the 21st century, particularly in America, that word often carries heavy negative baggage. For many, it's synonymous with man-made rules, empty rituals, conflict, and control. It's seen as the dead institutional husk that spirituality tries to escape. But this modern negative definition is not at all how the word has been understood for most of human history. And it is certainly not the Catholic understanding. In classic Catholic theology, guided by masters like St. Thomas Aquinas, religion is not a bad word. In fact, it's a virtue. It is understood as a subcategory of the cardinal virtue of justice. The virtue of justice is, quite simply, the act of giving another person what they are properly due. You owe your parents honor. You owe your employer an honest day's work. You owe your fellow citizens respect. Religion, then, is the specific virtue of rendering to God what he is due. And what is God, our Creator and the source of all being, due? He is due our worship, our honor, our fidelity, our adoration, and our thanks. He is due sacrifice. From this perspective, religion is not a man-made burden. It is the highest, most noble, and most necessary act a human being can perform. It is the creature giving its proper, just, and loving response to the Creator. So when Jesus enters the scene, we must ask this: is he truly attacking the virtue of giving God worship? Or is he attacking the sickness that erupts when that virtue becomes poisoned? Chapter 2. The targets of the indictment: Pharisees and scribes. The primary evidence for the Jesus was anti-religion case comes from his blistering public confrontations, most notably the 7 woes recorded in Matthew, chapter 23. These are not gentle criticisms. He calls the scribes and Pharisees hypocrites, fools, blind guides, a brood of vipers, and whitewashed tombs that are beautiful on the outside, but filled with dead men's bones and all. Uncleanness. These are some of the most intense and damning words he speaks in the entire New Testament. But to understand the criticism, we must understand who he was criticizing. Who exactly were the Pharisees? It's easy to just cast them as the one-dimensional bad guys of the Gospels, but the historical reality is more complex. The Pharisees were a lay-led reform movement that emerged a century or two before Christ. Their original goal was actually quite admirable. They saw the corruption of the temple priesthood, the Sadducees, who were the wealthy liberal aristocrats, and wanted to call the people back to holiness. Their core belief was that the Torah, God's law, should be applied to every single aspect of daily life, not just in the temple. They believed in God's providence, the resurrection of the dead, and the existence of angels, all doctrines that Jesus himself shared. In fact, on most theological points, Jesus was far closer to the Pharisees than to the Sadducees, whom he barely engages. So if their original goal was holiness, what went so wrong? Chapter 3. The sickness of hypocrisy. Jesus' indictment in Matthew 23 gives us the answer, and it is repeated over and over. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! The key is not their religious devotion, but their hypocrisy. The Greek word hypocrites is a theatrical term. It means a stage actor, someone who wears a mask and pretends to be something they are not. Their religion had become a performance. It had become disconnected from its true purpose, which is love of God and love of neighbor. They had kept the shell of the law but had hollowed out its heart. Jesus makes this crystal clear. He accuses them of tithing mint and dill and cumin, an incredibly scrupulous and detailed observance of the law while neglecting the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faithfulness. He doesn't tell them to stop tithing. He says, "These you ought to have done without neglecting the others." He wasn't demanding less religious observance. He was demanding that it be integrated with an internal reality. He condemns them because they preach, but do not practice. He blasts them for creating complex legal loopholes to get around the spirit of the law, like their Corban rule, which allowed a man to declare his property a gift to God, so he wouldn't have to use it to support his elderly parents, a direct violation of the fourth commandment. Their religion had become a tool for self-glorification, making long prayers on street corners to be seen by others, taking the best seats in the synagogues, demanding public titles of honor. It was, in short, a religion of the ego. Jesus' fury was not directed at the law, but at their use of the law as a costume to hide hearts that were, in his words, full of greed and self-indulgence. Chapter 4. The deeply religious life of Jesus. The final and most devastating blow to the Jesus was anti-religion argument is the life of Jesus himself. If he came to abolish organized ritualistic religion, he did a very poor job of demonstrating it. The Gospels paint a portrait of a man who was a deeply pious and observant first-century Jew. His entire life was saturated with what we would call religion. He was presented in the temple according to the law of Moses. He was circumcised on the 8th day. We find his hidden life summed up in one verse. He went to Nazareth and was obedient to them. He submitted to the religious authority of his parents, Mary and Joseph, fulfilling the fourth commandment. As an adult, his public ministry followed the same pattern. Luke 4:16 tells us that when he came to Nazareth, he went to the synagogue as was his custom on the Sabbath day. This wasn't a one-time thing. It was his regular religious habit. He didn't avoid the religious service. He was a faithful attendee. He traveled to Jerusalem, the center of his religion, for the required pilgrimage feasts like Passover and the Feast of Tabernacles. Most telling of all is his attitude toward the temple. He didn't picket it or tell his followers to boycott it. He called it "my Father's house." And his most dramatic public act, the cleansing of the temple, was not an act against religion. It was a zealous, furious act for true religion. He was not trying to tear the temple down. He was trying to restore it from a den of thieves back to its sacred purpose, a house of prayer for all nations. He was not an outsider protesting religion. He was the insider, the son of the house, angrily cleaning out the corruption that defiled his own home. Chapter 5. Fulfiller, not destroyer. Jesus' entire mission was not one of abolition, but of fulfillment. His mission statement is given clearly in the Sermon on the Mount. "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them." He came to show what the law had been pointing to all along. He took the old external commands and radicalized them, showing that their true fulfillment was internal. The law said, "Do not murder." But Jesus said that anger in your heart is already a form of murder. The law said, "Do not commit adultery." But Jesus said that lust in your heart is already a form of adultery. He wasn't getting rid of the rules. He was revealing their ultimate divine purpose, which was to transform the human heart, not just regulate external behavior. He recognized the authority of the religious system he was in, even as he condemned its hypocritical leaders. In that same chapter of Matthew 23, right before he unleashes the woes, he gives this shocking command to the crowds. "The scribes and the Pharisees sit on Moses' seat, so practice and observe whatever they tell you." He upholds their teaching authority. But he immediately adds, but not what they do, for they preach but do not practice. The problem once again was not the religion being taught, which was the law of God. The problem was the hypocrisy of the teachers. Jesus was waging war not on religion, but on the profound spiritual sickness that occurs when religious acts become a substitute for a relationship with God, rather than the expression of it. He was not an anarchist trying to tear down a system. He was the true high priest, the true lawgiver, and the true prophet come to reclaim his own house. But his cleansing of the temple was only the beginning. He didn't just come to fix the old religion. He came to be the new one. He began to speak of the temple's coming destruction, while at the same time making the most revolutionary claim of his ministry, that he himself was the new temple, and that the new worship, the true religion, would be centered not on a building, but on his own body. He wasn't just fixing the old system, he was about to replace it. Chapter 6, the new temple. The claim to be the fulfillment of the law was revolutionary, but it was Jesus' next claim that sealed his fate. The entire religious world of the first-century Jew revolved around one singular physical building, the Jerusalem Temple. It was the only place on earth for sacrifice, the one true dwelling place of God's glory. It was the beating heart of their religion, and it is this very building that Jesus confronts. In the Gospel of John, chapter 2, right after he cleanses it, the Jewish leaders demand a sign to justify his authority. His answer is perhaps the most enigmatic and important claim of his entire ministry. Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. The leaders, understandably, are outraged. They mock him, saying it took 46 years to build this magnificent structure, and he will raise it in 3 days. But the Gospel of John gives us the divine decoder ring. He writes, "But he was speaking about the temple of his body." This is the master key to the entire question. Jesus is not an anti-religious anarchist. He is the replacement. He is declaring that his own physical body is the new, true, and permanent temple. The old one, made of stones, was merely a type, a prefigurement. His body, the incarnate word, is the reality. The old temple was the place you went to meet God. Jesus' body is God himself, walking among you. This single claim reframes everything. It explains why, at the very moment of his death on the cross, the Gospel of Matthew tells us the great veil of the temple, the massive, thick curtain that separated the Holy of Holies from the rest of the world, was torn in two from top to bottom. This was a cosmic theological event. The barrier between God and humanity was destroyed. The old system of separation and animal sacrifice was rendered obsolete, its purpose fulfilled. The new Holy of Holies was no longer a room in a building, but the sacred heart of Christ, pierced and opened for all. The new and living temple, his resurrected body, was now the one true center of all worship for all time. Chapter 7. The new worship, in spirit and in truth. If the temple has been replaced, then the worship must also be transformed. Jesus' clearest teaching on this comes not in a synagogue or in the temple, but in a tense, one-on-one encounter with a social and religious outcast, the Samaritan woman at the well. Found in John chapter 4, the Samaritans and the Jews were locked in a deep religious schism, centered on where true worship was supposed to happen. The Jews said Mount Zion in Jerusalem. The Samaritans said Mount Gerizim. Their entire religious disagreement was about geography. The woman poses this very question to Jesus, asking him to pick a side in their religious debate. Jesus' answer blows up the entire debate. "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. But the hour is coming and is now here, when the true worshippers will worship the Father in spirit and one in truth." This verse is often cherry-picked by those in the spiritual but not religious camp to mean that Jesus is abolishing all structure, ritual and form in favor of just having sincere feelings. But this is a complete misunderstanding of what he means by spirit and in truth. What is worship in spirit? It means worship that is not based on flesh and bloodline, like being born a Jew or a Samaritan, but is animated by the power of the Holy Spirit. It is the worship of the new creation, the person who has been born again of water and the Spirit in baptism. What is worship in truth? The Greek word for truth is aletheia. It doesn't just mean sincerity, it means reality, the fullness of what has been revealed. And who is the fullness of truth? Jesus himself. He says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." Therefore, to worship in spirit and in truth is to participate in the one, true objective worship of the Son offering himself to the Father in the power of the Holy Spirit. This is not an abolition of ritual. It is the definition of the Catholic Mass. The Mass is the ultimate worship in spirit and in truth. It is the real, objective sacrifice of Christ, the truth, made present on the altar by the power of the Holy Spirit. Jesus wasn't against ritual. He was against empty ritual, and he came to replace the empty rituals with a ritual that was full of his own divine life and presence. Chapter 8. The New Priesthood and the New Sacrifice. A new temple and new worship require a new priesthood and a new sacrifice. The entire religious system of the Old Testament was based on the Levitical priesthood. Their primary job was to stand in the temple and offer the blood of bulls and goats day after day, year after year, to atone for the sins of the people. It was a religion of endless, repeated ritual. The letter to the Hebrews explains why Jesus came to fulfill and end this system. Jesus is the one true high priest, but he is not from the priestly tribe of Levi. He is from the royal tribe of Judah. He is a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek, a mysterious king-priest from the time of Abraham. Unlike the old priests, Jesus' priesthood is not based on ancestry, but on his very being as the eternal Son of God. And unlike the old priests, he doesn't offer the blood of an animal. He offers the one perfect, all-sufficient sacrifice, himself, on the altar of the cross. This one act of perfect religious worship, the Son's perfect obedience to the Father's will, does what millennia of animal sacrifices could not. It actually takes away sin and definitively reconciles humanity to God. But here is the crucial point. Jesus did not simply perform this one act and then leave us to just remember it. In his divine genius, he created a new religion, a new structure, to perpetuate this one sacrifice through time. He founded a new priesthood. At the Last Supper, on the night before he was betrayed, he took bread and wine. He said, "This is my body. This is my blood of the new covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins." And then he gave his apostles a staggering command: "Do this in memory of me." The Catechism of the Catholic Church is crystal clear. In that moment, he instituted the sacrament of the Eucharist and ordained the apostles as the first priests of the new covenant. He gave them and their successors the sacred power and authority to make his one perfect sacrifice present again on the altar, under the forms of bread and wine. He didn't abolish the priesthood. He perfected it. He didn't end sacrifice. He eternalized it. Chapter 9, the founding of a visible religion, the Church. This leads us to the final, unavoidable conclusion. Jesus didn't just leave behind a book of philosophy or a set of moral guidelines. He founded a visible, organized, hierarchical, and sacramental religion. He founded a church. This is the single greatest counter-argument to the Jesus was anti-religion idea. He turned to his apostle, Simon, and said, "You are Peter," which means rock, "and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." The word he uses is ecclesia, a specific term meaning a called-out assembly or congregation. It is a structured, corporate body. He didn't just tell this church to have a personal relationship. He gave it a structure, built on the foundation of the 12 apostles, with Peter as their clear head. He gave it authority, telling them, "Whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven." He gave it specific rituals, or sacraments. "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them, and do this in memory of me." He gave it a divine mission and a divine promise: "I am with you always, to the end of the age." Jesus Christ was not an anarchist who came to tear down religion. He was a divine architect who came to build his own. He came to establish the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, his own mystical body on earth, as the new and perfect religion through which his life and grace would flow to all humanity until the end of time. This presents us with a profound new problem. If Jesus did found a perfect divine religion in his church, why is it so often populated by imperfect, sinful, and yes, hypocritical people? How can we reconcile the divine nature of the church with the human sinfulness of its members? This is the central struggle of every believer, and it's the very question that will lead us to the heart of what it truly means to be a follower of Christ. Chapter 10. A field of wheat and weeds. We are left with the most difficult and personal question of all. If Jesus founded a perfect, divine religion in his church, why is it so often populated by imperfect, sinful, and yes, hypocritical people? How do we reconcile the divine bride of Christ with the human sins of her members? This isn't a modern problem. It's a problem that Jesus himself anticipated and explained in one of his most important parables, the parable of the wheat and the weeds. In Matthew 13, Jesus tells a story of a man who sows good wheat in his field. But in the night, his enemy comes and sows weeds all among the wheat. When the servants discover the sabotage, they ask the master, "Do you want us to go and pull up the weeds?" The master's answer is the key to understanding the church on earth. He says, "No, lest in gathering the weeds you root up the wheat along with them. Let both grow together until the harvest." Jesus himself explains the parable. The field is the world. The sower is the Son of Man. The wheat are the children of the kingdom, and the weeds are the children of the evil one. The harvest is the end of the age. This is a radical teaching. Jesus is telling us that his church, in its earthly form, what Catholic theology calls the ecclesia militans, or the church militant, is designed to be a mixed body. It is a field where, until the end of time, genuine saints and profound sinners will grow side by side, often indistinguishably. The great Saint Augustine, in battling the Donatist heresy, a group that claimed the church could only be made up of pure saints, used this very parable. He argued that the church is a corpus permixtum, a mixed body. To demand a perfectly pure church on earth is to misunderstand its very purpose and to attempt to bring about the final judgment prematurely. Chapter 11. A Hospital for Sinners. This parable reveals the what, but Jesus' own actions reveal the why. Why would he design a church that contains sinners? Because the church is not a museum for saints. It is a hospital for sinners. This is the single most important concept for overcoming the scandal of hypocrisy. When the Pharisees, in their self-righteousness, condemn Jesus for his irreligious behavior, they ask his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" They saw religion as a club for the pure, a fortress to keep the unclean out. Jesus' reply turns their entire worldview upside down. He says, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. For I came not to call the righteous, but sinners." Jesus did not found the church for people who already had it all figured out. He founded it for the spiritually sick. He founded it for us. The sacraments he instituted are not rewards for good behavior. They are divine medicine for the soul. The Eucharist is not a prize for the perfect. It is the food for the journey for the weak. The sacrament of confession is the emergency room for the spiritually wounded. Therefore, to point at a sinful Catholic, even a sinful priest or bishop, and say, "Look, a hypocrite," the religion is a failure. Theirs to make a profound category error. It's like walking into a hospital, seeing a building full of sick people and declaring, "This hospital is a failure. It's full of sickness." The very presence of the sickness is the proof that the institution is doing its job, receiving the sick to heal them. The hypocrisy of Christians does not disprove the truth of the church. It proves the desperate need for the church. Chapter 12, the eternal choice. This brings our entire investigation back to the individual heart. Jesus' war was not on religion. It was on hypocrisy. And hypocrisy is the spiritual disease of using the outward signs of religion to build up one's own ego, rather than using them to inwardly kill one's own ego. It is the sickness of loving the appearance of holiness more than God himself. This is a choice that every single human being, religious or not, must face. The Pharisees had the law, the temple, the rituals, and the prayers. They had all the tools of true religion, but they used these tools for pride, power, and self-glorification. Jesus came to show them, and us, the true purpose of religion: to love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. The presence of hypocrites in the church does not invalidate the religion Jesus founded. It simply presents every member in every generation with the same eternal choice. We are all given the tools of the new perfect religion: the creed, the sacraments, the magisterium, the community of the church. The question is, what will we do with them? Will we become modern-day Pharisees, using our knowledge of the catechism or our pious devotions to judge others and build ourselves up? Or will we, recognizing our own sickness, humbly approach the divine physician in his hospital? Will we use these graces to wage war not on other people, but on our own pride, our own greed, and our own hypocrisy? The problem isn't the religion. The problem is, and always has been, the human heart. Closing, the God who founded a family. We began with a popular modern idea that Jesus was a spiritual teacher who came to liberate us from the burdens of organized religion. But as we journeyed through the Gospels, we discovered a truth that is far more challenging and infinitely more profound. We found that Jesus was not anti-religious. He was in fact the most deeply and truly religious man who ever lived, a pious Jew who loved his father's house. We learned that his fierce anger was not directed at religion itself, but at the spiritual cancer of hypocrisy, the act of turning religion into a mask, a performance of the ego. But Jesus didn't just come to critique, he came to build. He didn't just cleanse the old religion, he came to fulfill and replace it. He revealed that he, in his own body, was the new and living temple. He showed that the new worship was not tied to a mountain, but would be done in spirit and in truth. And then, in a final act of divine genius, he established a new, visible, and organized religion to carry his life and his sacrifice through time. He founded a new priesthood at the Last Supper. He gave us the new sacrifice of the Eucharist, and he built his new kingdom, the Church, on the rock of Peter. So, was Jesus against religion? No. He was against the hypocrisy that corrupts it. He loved true religion so much that he rescued it from its human failings, perfected it, and made it his own mystical body. He did not leave us as spiritual orphans to wander alone, trying to invent our own relationship with him. He founded a family. He built a hospital. And he, as the divine physician, stands at the door not to congratulate us on our health, but to welcome us in our sickness. The challenge he leaves us with is not to abandon religion, because we see hypocrites, but to embrace the one true religion he founded, so that he can heal us of our own hypocrisy. The great temptation for all of us is to see the sin in others. But how do we fight the hypocrisy in our own hearts? How do we ensure our own practice of faith is an act of love, not performance? We invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this deep dive into the heart of the Gospels has helped you, please subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss our next exploration of the Catholic faith. Thank you for watching.